Pam, John, thanks so much for being with us today.
How do we look? All right?
You look great.
Great.
That's good.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Pam, can we start with you? I would just love to give you the opportunity to share a little bit about the wonderful work the Action Center is doing for those who might not know about your organization.
Yeah, thank you. The Action Center has been around since 1968. We're a 55-year-old comprehensive human service organization that was founded by volunteers in the 60s when they recognized a lot of income disparity and people who were really struggling to get by. And we have stayed true to those roots for all of these years. We continue to grow and be one of the largest, most comprehensive human service organizations in Denver Metro. We have seen an increase in the need, unfortunately, for our organization. And so our organization has continued to grow and expand to meet that need. We have 3 tiers of support that we offer to the community. There's the immediate needs services that are things like our free clothing bank, our free food and grocery, a mailbox for folks who are unhoused, and additional services to sort of stabilize and support people who are really the most vulnerable in our community. And then our second tier of support is the financial assistance support, and that comes in the form of essential rent assistance, utility assistance. We have an emergency bill pay program, so that when folks in our community hit a bump that for maybe you or me wouldn't mean so much, a flat tire, a broken down vehicle, we're able to help them stay moving forward and not lose that employment and become even more destabilized. And then our third tier of support is really our long-term work with community members with our family coaching program. And in that, we walk beside community members who are facing all kinds of different challenges to their ongoing stability for their families. And we help them to look at the various aspects of their lives and find the vulnerable spots and choose the place where they want to go forward and work on goals and continue to stabilize their lives with our assistance and connecting them to our resources and other resources in the community.
Thank you. If you haven't visited the Action Center, you might not know, but comprehensive is a great adjective for what you do. They have such a great space with resources well positioned throughout their facility. John, I think there's sometimes a bit of tension between current financial needs, current financial stability, and future sustainability. So, how does the Action Center balance those two, those needs to provide services now, but also position yourselves to implement long-term vision?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's always strong. I mean, I've been in development in nonprofit my whole professional career, and I've never seen an organization that had enough resources, all the needs that were coming to them. There's always a challenge, and unfortunately, there always will be that challenge. And so, when you look at the dollars coming in and the needs, you have to balance that. Our heart is always to serve everybody, and just let the floodgates roll. But again, that's not a long-term sustainable kind of concept. If a donor gives us an extra $10,000, the temptation is easy to say, well, we're going to put it right in and let's spend it immediately. Because that'll help us serve maybe an extra 10 people this month. But if we put it away into an endowment, now I can serve those 10 people forever, those additional 10 people. And that's certainly a lot more. And so we're always trying to balance those needs. I came from an organization where I worked for 17 years. It had a very huge endowment program. So when I came to the Action Center, I'm like, we don't have an endowment? We need to get an endowment. We need to do something. But again, the needs were great. And we're like, well, John, that's too soon. You're pushing too soon, so it's truly great needs. And so we had to try to figure out how to balance what that looked like.
Before we go back to Pam, John, one of the reasons I really wanted you to share part of your story is because you have endowment and long-term funds with us. you have a really neat intentional view of your resources, and that's led you to kind of a cascading model of building funds for your future. Can you share with us kind of what that cascading model of your investments look like?
Yeah, it's about having conversations with our board about current stability and meeting current needs, but also looking long-term. How far down the road can we get? And then balancing those needs and those demands. And so what we've been building slowly, I mean, it's taken a while. We've been working on this for 4 or 5 years now. But getting to the point where we know, well, how much do we need in our checking account, our business checking account? Is it 5 months operating cash? Is 6 months? What is it that makes sense for the Action Center? And then how do we get to where we're maintaining that number? Once we get to that number, then we said, all right, now what can we do with the excess that's coming in instead of just pushing it into the program? So we said, well, let's go to a long-term investment fund over at Colorado Gives Foundation. And let's just start letting that money flow into that fund for us. So we know we've got 6 months of operating cash. Great, we're good. Our finance director does a really great job of forecasting 12 months out, so we know we can maintain that number. So that means if I get that extra $10,000, there's no reason I can't put it into the long-term investment fund. And for us, the long-term investment fund really works well because it's not completely locked up. It does have some level of liquidity. So that was a concern of the board is, do I lock up money forever and ever and I lose the liquidity of it? And so we want to just continue to build that long-term fund to a number that we're comfortable with. And once we've reached that number, which we did this month, we're excited. Now we can really feel comfortable about now excess funds like a legacy gift coming in. We can now put that into a permanent endowment that we don't have to worry about it sacrificing or risking our future. Because we know we have this here, we have this here, let's just continue to build that, which means long-term we're going to be able to serve a lot more people in the long run, as opposed to looking for a short gain on, let's serve these 100 people real quick. And so that's kind of our plan that we're trying to slowly build.
Wonderful. If anyone was here a few years ago, the Action Center got to share a little bit about that long-term fund, and as John said, it has a little bit more liquidity. In fact, as I recall the story, you used some of it for kind of a capital purchase, and the story goes that Kelly Duncan met them in the middle of a snowstorm on a Friday afternoon to deliver a check. So
it's true.
It is true. There you go. It's not one of those, I walked 5 miles uphill both ways. But yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing about how you're able to use those. And I'm glad to hear that throughout the history they've served the vision and the strategic vision of the Action Center well. It's interesting for me because the Action Center is such a staple of Lakewood and the Jefferson County community. So it's sometimes odd for me to think that you guys have had just a remarkable journey to where you are today. And as you just said, it's taken time. So I guess I always like to try to pull wisdom from that experience. So Pam, what advice would you give to people in this room who maybe are where you all were 5 years ago in a similar position? What would you say to them as they explore what their journey might look like?
That's a great question. I think in some ways we're the poster child for doing a better job of long-term thinking and planning. When I got to the Action Center and shortly thereafter pulled John in, we were in a challenging place. The organization had become destabilized by leadership change and by some changes in the economy and losing some major grants and needing to shore up our team, our fundraising team. And so we were in a really difficult and precarious spot. And as John has said, we didn't have big endowment funds at that point in time. There hadn't been yet the ability to think long-term and strategically. So we didn't have, sitting at Colorado Gives Foundation, money that we knew that we could lean on. And so it was a lot of lessons from that experience, not just about long-term planning, but also about when, organizations are just like people. We hit bumps in the road, and it happens to everyone. And so when it happens, how are you going to handle it? And I think for me, the lesson, not just from this experience, but from watching other peers in the nonprofit world go through tough times, the real key is to be transparent. Talk about the challenges you're having. Talk about how you got there. Talk about your plans for regaining stability. Be open. In some ways, be vulnerable, because everyone knows this is part of life. For individuals, for organizations, as I said, we all go through this. So don't hide it. Come out and talk about what got you in this situation and how you plan to fix it. That was number one key lesson for us. Number two, you have to invest in your core team. Find someone like John who brings a tremendous amount of experience and expertise, and don't be afraid to make an upfront investment even when you don't have a lot to spend. Because it's the strength of your team, it's the building of the culture, the building of the resilience of your team that is going to then bring back the trust with community. That you're going to be able to show that the team that you have is absolutely 100% committed to the mission, is committed to delivering on that mission, and is able to do so. And it allows then for real relationship building to happen and real trust building to continue. So I think those are two really key things. And then again, thinking when you can, as often as you can, to think about planning for the future. Talk to Colorado Gives Foundation about, even if it's starting small, thinking about how you plan for the days that aren't going to be quite as good to you, so that you know that you can get through those bumps, because they are going to happen.
As I look at the clock, I would have loved to save a little time for questions, but I want to honor everyone's time here. So are you guys available to stick around for a couple minutes afterwards and field any questions from folks?
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Thank you again for having us.
Thank you so much, Pam and John, and please relay a huge thanks from all of us to the staff and volunteers of the Action Center. Thank you.